Hello YouTube. So today I am going through another tasting sample set of 3 whiskeys. I've done this before on occasion, and again I'm doing it without notes. I have no notes sitting here, so I'm going to be giving you these my impressions on the fly and my scores on the fly. What the thing is, this is my last tasting set for a while. I've kind of whittled it down to just this. And I've had this one sitting around for a while, and I haven't done it yet because, frankly, I was kind of worried it was going to make me very sad. And that has to do with the current state of Bowmore Distillery on Islay. Let me get these poured, give them a little air. All right, I've been airing these bottles out for about an hour now. I'd give a little pour, just a little tiny pour to try to get some air in them before we do this. But really, I haven't had time to get any proper tasting notes in. So while these are airing out, I'm going to tell you why I am very worried about how this session is going to go. Bowmore, in my opinion, has made more unforced errors than any other great distillery in the world. The one everyone knows about is, of course, the very, shall we say, floral years of production from circa 1980 or so up to 88, 89. Some of the 89s are actually pretty good, but for the most part, you want to avoid the 80s in Bowmore's. There's more people than me who've looked at pricing on independent bottlings from Beaumore in the 80s and thought, oh, that's pretty cheap, I'll give it a shot. And we've regretted the result. Do not do that. Leave those bottles alone, leave them to someone else. So what happened was basically for a couple of years, Beaumore distillate was just undrinkably floral, perfumed, violets, lavender, all over the place. And I am dead certain it was a yeast thing, a yeast change thing. And I am pretty certain that they changed the yeast in order to speed up fermentation times. And I'm guessing this because my experience with rum in particular, but also some bourbon, some American whiskeys, has kind of taught me that a lot of the time when you speed up fermentation like that, the results are a very floral distillate. Which can be pleasant in cases like rum. It is not very pleasant when you're dealing with a smoky peaty Scotch malt. All right, so that's one major misstep they've made. The other major misstep is the branding of this stuff. Bowmore has not significantly changed their branding in years. So just to put this in perspective, if you go on the internet right now and check out what brands in Scotch have got buzz, particularly on Islay. Let's just limit it to Islay or peaty whiskeys, right? Caol Ila has got more buzz than Beaumore right now. Bunnahabhain, Ardnahoe have got more buzz than Beaumore right now. Beaumore is one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland. It has its own malting floor still, right? It's got these amazing kind of squat stills. It's got everything you would need to be making great whiskey, and no one is really talking about it. And that's just, it's crazy. And part of it is just the nature of the branding. Let's talk about the 12-year-old for a second. Before I try these things. I tried all of these, maybe 10 years ago, and I haven't gone back to them since then. Let's talk about the 12-year-old. This is bottled at 40% ABV. There is, so far as I tell, someone correct me if I'm wrong, so far as I am aware, there is only one other entry-level bottling on Islay that is still 40% ABV. It's the Laphroaig Select, and it is an abomination that is also coming out of the the Suntory house, right? So same people responsible for that. I think that came out pretty much the same year that Suntory took over Beam, so I'm blaming them. This is the one that has stood the longest at 40%. Let's talk about Bunnahabhain, right? Bunnahabhain, 15 years ago, had a little anonymous 12-year-old that no one really cared about, bottled at 40%. They have since upped that to 46 or so, and everyone is talking about Bunnahabhain. Everyone loves it. It's sort of become everyone's pet distillery now. This sort of big industrial place in the northeast corner of Islay that, why is this place, getting more buzz than Bowmore? And a lot of it just has to do with the over branding, the style of presentation of these entry-level malts. Something like Caol Ila and say Ardmore, for example, is saved by the amount of good independent bottlings coming out, despite maybe their own official ranges not being that great. But Beaumore doesn't really have that. You don't see a lot of independent bottlings coming out anymore. And so what is there to talk about, really, despite the fact that it is indeed a great distillery? Let me repeat that, a great distillery. You put Bunnahabhain and Bowmore up against each other in a fair fight, I would put my money on the Bowmore. At least not 80s Bowmore. And to give you some more context on my feelings in this, years ago, 10, 12, I don't even remember, 10, 12 years ago, I was lucky enough to be at a tasting where the host served everyone a little bit of about a half ounce or so of Bowmore from distilled in the 60s. Don't ask me who bottled it. Don't even ask me what year it was. I think it was 66, maybe 68, something like that. But it was tremendous whiskey. It was astonishing. Like, not even bottled at high strength. I don't even, probably 43 or so. But, it had the peat and it had the lemons and a little bit of the thorl and the tar. But this, backed up by this fruitiness that is totally unlike anything I've had since. And it's still, like, I didn't take notes or score or anything, but that is up there in my pantheon. That is as good as any spirit I've had in my life. So, knowing what Bowmore can do and tasting through, circa 10 years ago, the official range, was a bit of a depressing experience because the official range is so, watered down and filtered and colored up and, manipulated with wood, and it felt a little soulless. But I'm going to give this an honest shot. I just spent my money on it because I wanted to know, so we're going to find out. A couple of years ago, to give Suntory and Morris and Bowmore some credit, a couple of years ago they did try to come out with some interesting stuff. So there was a Tempest, which was kind of Bowmore's answer to the Auchentoshan Valanche, also from the same house. But I can't find the Tempest anymore. I would be buying it if I didn't even like it that much, but I would be buying it because I love Bowmore. But even that seems to have gone by the wayside in favor of, just the standard stuff. So let's start. Let's go through this. We'll start off with the standard 12-year-old Bowmore Islay single malt Scotch whiskey, bottled at 40%. All right, again, no notes. I'm just doing this on the fly. Here we go. On the nose, there is peat. And interesting, it's a little bit dirtier, a little bit kind of grungier, muddier than peat I typically expect on Islay. We're not getting that clean maritime note. This is much more, peat with a little bit of like, kind of dead flowers mixed in, but nice dead flowers. Dead flowers, mud. Some vanilla coming through, a little dark chocolate. Fruity notes, dried cherry. Actually becoming a little bit more floral over time. A little bit of other fruitiness coming through, like a dried pineapple sort of note. Little bit of an orange twist in there. It is vague, and this is nothing. This is the problem with things bottled at 43%, right? I mean this the character just gets kind of smudged. It's hard to pick out distinct notes that are kind of that are going to hang around for you. Not a bad notice at all. A little bit of Darjeeling in there, like stewed Darjeeling, and hint of some kind of coffee thing, but not brewed coffee. This is more like, yeah. Let's say this. Go back to the dark chocolate note. Let's add in like dark chocolate with a little bit of coffee infused into it. So, I think they sell that at Trader Joe's. That kind of thing. Coffee, dark. Oh. Now it's getting a little bit soapy. That's not great. All right, let me go to the palate before this gets any worse. But it's not a bad nose. It really feels a little bit anemic, but let's move on. Whiskey makers of the world, do not do this. Do not take one of the most characterful distillates out there, and Bowmore, that Bowmore's really characterful, and bury it in a 40% bottling. This is not where this should be. Do not do this. Do not do this. I mean, there's a lot going on. I'm picking up on some of it, but I mean, you're saying to yourself, look, we can save a little bit of money by, watering this down a little bit and stretching our batches out. Okay, here's the problem. You do not make money by, with your entry-level bottlings anymore. That's not how the business works. This is the halo, right? The halo is not your upper-level, 18-year-old, which you're pushing the price down on. That is not what's getting people in the showroom anymore, so to speak. That is the place where you get your money. That is, you push up the prices on that. You get people excited about the brand through having a really good entry-level bottling at 40, 50, 60 bucks at 40%. No filtering, no manipulation. Just here's the distillate and some good wood, and that's it. And then once once you're getting a buzz on it, then you start releasing something more special with higher prices, and people start chasing after that. That's how you make money right now, in the way the business and the sort of general economy is set up. The buyers and the money follow the press, and the press follow the nerds. You want to make the nerds happy, and the nerds drink entry-level bottlings, and they want good presentation. That's it. I'm not even asking for 46. Give me 43 on this, and it will be improved immensely. And you will see sales increase across the range. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to shut up and try to give you some objective tasting notes. By the way, there are some tasting notes written on the back of this box here. I will not read them to you because they are not worth your time. On the palate, again, it's a very kind of muddy floral peat, very different from anything else I can think of on Islay. So there's a little bit of brininess coming through, but it's way dialed back from something like Laphroaig or Caol Ila or Ardbeg, anything like that. We're replacing that maritime note for the most part with this really interesting floral note, which is threatening to get out of control. Maybe a little bit more than threatening at times, but for the most part, keeping itself under wraps. Flowers, a little bit of what is that? Kind of a perfume note, but nice. Freshly ground pepper, mud again, some twigs and leaves off the ground. And then you got some woody notes, some vanilla, some dried fruit again, a little we'll go with dried cherry, a little raisin. I'm not getting any sort of orangey pineapple-y notes this time on the palate, but let's go back and try it again. No, not really. There's like a... Oh, no, wait. There's like a little bit of like an orange pith thing going on. It's not really fruity orange or zesty orange. This is just like the kind of bitter pith. A little bit of Darjeeling again. Hint of cocoa powder. Hint of ground coffee. Ground like... yeah, like used coffee grinds. They're still kind of soggy. But the finish is very clipped. It does not hang around long, which is bad for peaty whiskey. It does not go back very far back in my mouth, which is bad for 12-year-old whiskey. I want my 12-year-old whiskey to kind of, be filling out my mouth better than this. This feels thin, and it feels thin because of the alcohol and the filtration. And the thinness makes this come across as bitter. And not in like a nice drying bitter way, just like kind of a slightly cardboardy way. And that's not the fault of the distiller or even the wood. That's the fault of them just trying to pull the strength down as far as they possibly could. And that's kind of what I'm getting. It's not bad. I've had worse than this, but it's also just not... I mean, what is this, like $50 now? I would not be spending that kind of money on this. I would wait until they bump it up to 43. For God's sake, bump it up to 43. Make it at least as good as the rest of the range, proof-wise. And then I might consider, but right now I'm giving this an 81 out of 100. 81 for the 12-year-old. All right, moving on to the Bowmore 15-year-old darkest sherry cask finish. So not fully sherry mature. This is finished, although it is long finished. I think it's a couple of years, so more like a secondary maturation. I don't know when. By the way, I don't know when this set came out. There is some code on one of the bottles I remember seeing. Yeah, there it is. 182271. So I imagine that 18 is the year. So I'm guessing this is from 2018 or so. All right. On the 15, on the nose. Little reticent. Not talking very much initially. I'm getting some vague sherried oakiness, some chalk dust, a little white pepper. Like dried, not even dried cherry, like dried cherry skins. Like you just dried out the skins and you just kind of nose that. There is peat, but it's way in the back. It's actually extremely toned down, the peat. A little twigginess going on. Some mud. That tea note is back. The Darjeeling note. And some flowers coming out. This is actually quite a lot of flowers coming out. A little bit of lavender, some field flowers. Actually, now the flowers are actually overpowering the peat, which is interesting. Okay. And I do have to note, usually with independent bottlings of Bowmore in the last couple of years, I have gotten flowers, I have gotten peat, obviously, but I've also gotten a kind of citric note in there, which has really worked beautifully. And I'm not getting a whole lot of any of that in this. There's a little bit of a chocolate orange thing, very, very light. This is really dominated by kind of mud and the floral thing right now. Yeah, that's kind of all I got on the nose. It's a very quiet nose right now, which is a little bit weird considering, I've had this open, an hour and 20 minutes now, and in the glass for a good part of that. Okay, let's give it a whirl on the palate. you can immediately see, oh, I was going to say something nice. I'll still say some nice things, but the thing I was going to say was you can immediately see the difference that the extra 3% makes. This is much more effective at covering my palate. The problem is that the way it is covering my palate is not particularly nice. I'm getting sort of a cheap cigarette ash thing that is the leading note on this. There's a little peat mingled with that floral note, so peat, dead flowers, mud, but the cigarette ash thing is kind of the main note. A little bit of orange on the front end, like orange peel, but also the orange pith thing, the chocolate orange thing, tea, black pepper again. It's not even really dried fruit. It's what is that? So along with the cheap cigarettes, we're going to throw in a little like perique ash, a little Louisiana plummy kind of tobacco ash, but it's really pretty slight. Again, it doesn't. It's dry, which is kind of nice, but it's not necessarily. I mean, the dry. So okay, let me back up. This is doing a much drier mouth covering thing than the first one, which I like, but it hasn't eliminated that kind of slightly cardboardy character of the first one. That's still there. Actually, the cheap cigarette ash thing is happening on the nose too. And the floral note is coming out a little bit more. It's also getting just a hair bit soapy now that I've had it open for a while, which is not really what I want to experience. Let me give this one more shot. I'm actually curious how this would go with water. You know what? I'm going to add water to these. I was just planning on doing a one and done initially, but let's go through this a second time. See, and add some water. So, I mean, without water, I'm gonna give this 15. I don't know, man. Like an 83 minus. It's better. It's better, but it's still not, anywhere near where I would want it to be. I mean, it's dry and it has this kind of unique floral thing, but it's just not something I really want to drink, and that not wanting to drink aspect to it is kind of what's getting it the minus. Like there's a point at which like the delicious factor and the appealing factor kind of becomes a relevant thing when you're tasting. So this is the point where that becomes relevant. All right, let's move on to the 18. This is not, I seem to remember this being marked darkest at some point, like the 15, but it is no longer. So it's just the Bowmore Islay single malt Scotch whiskey, 18 years old, bottled at 43%. No indication of cask, but by the color, well, first of all, by the color, I'm assuming a bit of caramel, but I'm also assuming maybe there's some more cherry cask on this than at least the 12, right? Price point of the 15 is about a hundo or so. The 18 is about 150. So if this is good, it might actually be a bargain, because that's kind of where, a lot of 18-year-olds are sitting at these days. Except for Macallan, which is at like 350. Don't get me on Macallan again. All right, so the 18-year-old Bowmore on the nose. Okay, that's not what I expected. Okay, so the first thing I have to note is I am getting almost no peat on this at all. Like the peat, hold on. Yeah, The 12-year-old has a little bit more peat than the 15, but the peat is still noticeable on the 15. On the 18, it's just gone. Like what I'm getting at this point is just kind of like, commercially, the commercial image of, classy old Scotch whiskey. Really, there's some burned notes, some s'mores where, that actually kind of caught on fire, that kind of thing. So marshmallow ash and melted cheap chocolate, burned graham cracker, little orange spritz in there, which is kind of nice. Okay, now that there's a little bit of a floral note coming out, but not as much as the others. This feels very much like the distillate has just been buried. And we're getting a little bit of flowers, just the tiniest little hint of peat now that I'm swirling the hell out of this. It's just barely coming. I have to say that the Ben Romac, actually even the Highland Park I reviewed a couple of videos ago, which were still pretty minimally peated in the wide scheme of things, they came across as peatier than this. And I know Bowmore distillate is much more heavily peated than them. It's just a nose that's not doing very much. It's muddy, it's burned, it's a couple of dried cherries again, the floral notes, but subdued, the little notch of peat in there, but subdued. At least it doesn't, come across as outright cigarette-y right now. There's a little bit of a tobacco note in this, kind of like a burly Virginia pipe blend, something like that. But definitely not what I want in a $150 whiskey. But let's see what's going on in the palate. Nope. Better than the 15. Let's give it that. Cleaner than the 15. So again, lots of burned notes, lots of burned s'more, that kind of caramelized sugary thing meeting that smoky thing. But there's more smoke and like coal smoke and burned coffee, and like if you took your pot of Darjeeling and boiled the hell out of it, and just reduced it to a sludge, and also the tobacco ash, but higher end tobacco this time, which is nice. Pipe tobacco, maybe a Dominican cigar in there. Maybe you did your Virginia Burley blend, you smoked it up, and you had an Arturo Fuente afterwards, and then you just kind of shoved the ashes into your mouth. That's kind of what I'm getting, along with the burned s'more kind of notes. There's a sweetness to this, which I imagine is from the cask. If you're paying attention on the finish, you can detect a little bit of the peat, and the floral notes are also there, but this is really all just buried by the wood. Let me and I don't really know what else to say. There's some, the orange spritz is back in there. There's even like a little hint of, like a citron peel maybe in there. But it's not. It's for something at this price point. It feels pretty darn basic. It feels very much like a wood parade with, a little bit of the distillate coming through to make the finish kind of interesting, but I still don't like it. No, that's being unkind. I do like this. If this were $50, I would, I would be perfectly happy buying a bottle. It's dry. That cardboardy aspect has subsided, so I'm going to give it points for that. But man, I mean, for one of the great distilleries, for this price point, man, I'm gonna give this. Oh, what would I give this? It is better, right? Let's say 84. It's good. We are tiptoeing, our way into good. But would I buy Benromach over this? Benromach 10? Yes, I absolutely would. Would I buy Springbank 10 over this? Yes, I absolutely would. How about Glengoyne 10? Yes, absolutely. I could go on, right? Those are as good, if not better, and price-wise, they are considerably better values than this. I do like the sort of nice dry finish. It feels a little bit cleaner than the previous two, but it just doesn't have. It doesn't have much of a sense of place. I'm not feeling Islay. I'm not feeling Bowmore. I'm not feeling much of anything aside from tobacco ash. But you know what? We're gonna go through these again, see what happens. I'm not going to take very long unless this gets really interesting, but we will see. We will give this an honest shot. All right, back to the 12-year-old with like 2 drops of water. Actually, the nose has receded, which is not a good sign. The oak has come out a little bit. I'm getting more vanilla now. More kind of almost a sawdusty note. Still floral, still has that kind of interesting muddy peat thing on the palate. Ugh. Still cardboardy. I mean, a lot of the stuff that's going on in here is good, is solid. But the thinness is making this just, again, bitter, cardboardy, and kind of unpleasant to drink. Yeah, I'm sticking with my 81. I'm moving on to the 15 with water. Let's see what this did. Okay. Now we're talking. It's brought out a kind of a lovely. Oh, what is that? We're getting more. Actually, I'm actually getting like European oak on this. I'm not sure if it's actually European oak, but that's kind of what I'm getting. Some almost a dried stone fruit, like a dried peach kind of note. A little more dried cherry, prune. Mixed dried fruits. That chocolate orange note is still there. Okay, this is promising. I might, if this is good, I might remove my minus from the score. I had a hope, but the palate is kind of the same. Palate might have actually gotten a little bit hairier. Yeah, the cardboardy thing, dry, but in this kind of, ashy kind of way that I really don't like. Let me give that one more shot. Mm-mm. It's not so unpleasant that I'm going to knock full-blown points off it, but I'm keeping my minus. 83 minus for the 15. And the 18, let's see. Let's see what that squirt of water did. I didn't give this much time, so maybe I'm not being fair, but we're going to go ahead because the video's rolling. Interesting, it actually brought out a little bit of citrus, which I've been waiting for this entire video. A little bit of citron. Actually, a little lime zest as well, which is pleasant. The floral note is kind of right there with them though. It's finally started to break out through the oak. Still no real peat though. Okay, this one, at least on the nose, seems to be reacting to water most positively, which is a good sign considering the price point of this. Hot damn. Okay, it's actually improved the finish a little bit. It's still doing all the basic elements, but what it's brought out, along with maybe a little more oak tannin, which is okay with me. I'm okay with that. It's brought out a little bit more of a citric note. I'm getting some lemon peel, like with a little bit of the oil rubbed in, a little bit more orange coming out. Mm-hmm. That's enough. I'm gonna give that an extra mark. That's 84 plus. 84 plus for the 18-year-old. Success. I mean, but right. Let me qualify that. So I do like one of these. It's the Bowmore 18-year-old, but I note that is the least Islay-like of these, and it is the most expensive of these by a lot, to the point where I would never buy a bottle. And I only like it to the point of it just kind of being maybe a hair bit better than, Glengoyne 10, and not as good as Bunnahabhain 12. That's kind of the context of this. And that's kind of how it is. So here, once again, 81 for the 12, 83 minus for the 15, 84 plus for the 18. And, that's kind of how it is with this current ownership, right? And, there are a good dozen distilleries in Scotland that I would love to see under different ownership, right? I sometimes talk about Scapa and Jura and a bunch of others, but in the darkest hours, the one, if you force me to narrow that down to one distillery that could be owned by someone else, someone who actually cares about presenting the stuff properly, and that would be Bowmore. I think Bowmore is the most unrealized potential of possibly any distillery in Scotland right now. I mean, they should be doing better than this. They should be doing better than this. And that's kind of all I got to say. Thanks for watching. And hopefully when I do Bowmore again, it will be under better circumstances. And hopefully this was educational, and cheers.